No, not a thing. The only thing we heard in the cell was, like I say, that guard came by and said, "What fools, now you die." And that's the only thing we heard. Yeah.
And when you came out, what did they make you do in terms of the
Work? We went out and I don't think they gave us a shovel, but they might have had something that we could use to fill in the bomb crater. There's a few rocks around, and we threw those in and filled it up. It took a while, but we filled it up. And they got back to the cell.
Were you aware of did you see any body?
No. In fact, one of these information things that my daughter had, they said they had buried some guys in some of those bomb craters, but no, we didn't see them. They might have been in there, covered up with enough dirt or whatever, so we didn't see them, but we didn't.
And do you remember anybody saying anything about that?
Not a thing. No, I didn't realize anything like that happened.
And there was were there any odors or anything?
No, I didn't notice it anyway, if there was. Not a thing. I had no idea something like that had happened. But it's just, like I say, that's all I remember about that was just going to work and cleaning up, filling in the bomb crater.
And how long did that take you all to do that?
Oh, I don't know, probably an hour or so. Because everybody by that time, since we hadn't eaten 4 days, all of us were kind of weak. And you didn't realize how weak we were until we started doing something like that.
Right. And then they sent you after that.
Yeah. After that, they took us back to the cell there on the base, and about two days, maybe a little longer, they moved us out, and that's when they took us, and eventually we wound up in Mooseburg.
Right. And were the bomb craters that you were filling, were they near the street, or were they like kind of way back to the barracks, or where were they? I think there were a number of them.
Oh yeah, seemed like they were right in the middle of the camp. Actually, they right in here where we were standing there with our hands in the air. It was a firing squad. Yeah.
So it was kind of near there.
Oh yeah, it's in the same vicinities.
And the Frenchman, at what point did he leave? Was he?
Well, when we were on the way, after we left there, we were on the way, I guess, going to the main camp to Mooseburg. And yeah, we had stopped in the farmhouse, and they had us sleeping in a barn there. As they call it a barn, it's a building. The walls about 3 foot thick, and then they came around. I guess about the next day after we got there, and they had some German guards, and they asked everybody, "What did you do in civilian life?" And we had one guy that said he was a student, and of course I was raised on a farm and I was a part-time student. But they took this student and the Frenchman, and they took them out. At the time, we didn't know where they were going, but when they came back, the Frenchman didn't come. The other guy was with him. He says he just caught the guards with their back turned, and he just walked away. So that was another thing that kind of convinced me he must be a spy. I don't think he'd make it.
You never saw him again?
Never saw him again. Yeah.
You remember which men went with him that came back?
He was a young guy. He said he was a student going to school before we went in his service.
So there were just the two of them that went?
Just just the student and the Frenchman. That's the only two. And
But you don't remember which one he was. You don't remember he was one of the ones in my father's crew?
which one was what?
Do you know which one he was of your 13?
Oh no, I don't know. He wouldn't. He wouldn't. No, none of my crew was there at all, and I don't know whose crew this so-called student was with. I have no idea.
Right, because my father had, there were eight of his crew that were there with you. So I didn't know if it was one of his crew members or not.
I don't know. I don't have any idea.
Because if you all couldn't really talk to each other, I guess it was hard to even know who was who.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing he said. Everybody agreed that the guy was kind of foolish, we thought, at that time, because, like I say, everybody knew the war was about over. And they figured, well, he'd be out and they'd be catching him again, and they probably would shoot him. But as it turned out, I guess he was in with them. So,
He got away, so...
oh, yeah. I think it was his way of getting away.
So did you go by train to Lewisburg mainly, or did you walk?
Well, I think we rode the train part of the way. And in fact, we ended up, seemed like it's up in, well, I don't know if it's up toward the Alps or where it was, but it was cold anyway. And of course, it was in a train station and we slept there overnight. And then from there on, we walked to Lewisburg.
If you looked on a map, that's a pretty good little piece.
It was a long ways. I don't remember, I know it took us more than one day to get there.
And when you got there, did you find your crew there as well?
My crew was, well, I didn't see them for about 2 days, but I finally ran across one of the guys, and he said, yeah, they're all here, and they were. I went back and talked to them, and they were in a different tent, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And were they kind of all captured together, more or less?
Yeah, they were. They were there. In fact, they were all in the same tent, and they pretty close together.
They were wondering what had happened to you, weren't they?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the guys said, we thought you were dead because nobody saw you. And like the time they got out, I was probably out of sight because I was the first one out. In fact, they said, well, here's the dead man we thought was gone.
And what all do you remember about being in Lewisburg?
In Lewisburg? Well, not a whole lot, really. No. They didn't give us too much information.
And did they give you much to eat, or?
Well, nobody got enough to eat, really. And in fact, after just before we got liberated, that they left, I think the night or day before, and we got up the next day, and they were all gone. And for about 3-4 days, we had nothing. And one of the guys, in fact, I met him at the hospital here. He was one of the guys that drove one of the tanks, and he drove through the fence at the camp. And I got this guy that was close by, that was sleeping next to me. And I said, well, I'm going to find something to eat. So we walked through that hole that he had made with the tape and walked into town. And actually, none of the civilians there didn't open the door or come to the door. So we didn't stay too long, walked back, and I saw a field out there that had little mounds all over it, and I had no idea what it was because, like I say, I'd been a farmer. My dad was a farmer, really. And sure enough, we dug in there, and there's potatoes. So we dug up